We have really great participation today. And I would like to introduce my terrific president, Matthew Fingerman, who is a senior wealth manager at BNY Mellon. And he will be your host today. So I am going to mute all of you right now, excluding the speakers. Okay, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks so much, Vered. And good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Fingerman, and I'm the president of the Philadelphia Israel Chamber of Commerce and the PICC Foundation. And I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. With all the challenges we face, I'm so grateful for the opportunity to recognize and celebrate the significant social impact one inspiring man has created, not only for our region, but Israel and globally. Today, we're honored to salute Ed Satell, founder and chairman of the Satell Institute, with our 2020 Lifetime Achievement Award. His actions have strengthened the research, philanthropic, and commercial ties between the greater Philadelphia region and Israel. Just to give you a little bit of background, the Philadelphia Israel Chamber of Commerce is an independent nonprofit, membership-based organization. And our sole mission is to promote the bilateral economic and commercial ties between our greater Philadelphia region, southern New Jersey, Delaware, and the state of Israel. We work closely with all three states, the Israeli Economic Mission, and organizations of all sizes for the advancement of not only the US, but Israeli economies. And our work has real impact. It results in financing, matchmaking, business development, formal government partnerships, and I think is very evident by today's honoree, ultimately social impact. We also represent the Bird Foundation, which is a fund established by the US and Israeli government, awarding up to 30 grants, up to $1 million every year for US-Israeli commercial innovation. In 2019 alone, we helped facilitate 3 grants in our region, leading to significant impact in digital health, mental health, and energy efficiency. All of this work is accomplished by one incredible and dedicated staff member, Vered Nohi. She is supported by a very active and passionate board and executive committee. But at the end of the day, none of this is possible without the support of our sponsors and our members. And I hope everyone today has the opportunity to see who supports this great work and has a chance to connect with them. Today's program includes a fireside chat with Ed Satell, led by David Gitlin, the former PICC president and partner at Royer Cooper, Cohen, and Braunfeld. David is a leading transactional attorney in both the US and Israel, and frankly, I couldn't think of anybody more appropriate to help lead this conversation with a luminary like Ed Satell. So let's get started. I'm excited to introduce Nick Bertram, CEO of Giant Food Stores and advisory board member of the Satell Institute, to present Ed with the PICC 2020 Lifetime Achievement Award.
Thank you, Matthew, and a very good morning to everyone. It's a joy to be here today. And if I think about today, it really is the arc of 2 incredible experiences. In 2018, I was invited to dinner with a gentleman I had not yet met and his chief of staff at the Union League. Little did I know I was going to meet someone who was going to change my life and my perspective on leading forever. And then a year later, I had the chance to go to Israel for the first time, spending 15 days there, and fell in love with the beauty of a country that I've always cared about, but now I actually appreciate firsthand. And now here we find ourselves today to salute Ed Satell, one of my heroes, one of many people's heroes, and a person who has quite literally, I think, changed the world. The best way that I could describe Ed is he is the great connector. He connects vision with action. He connects people with needs and solutions, and he connects ideas with implementers. He is the glue, he is the bridge that actually makes great things happen in pretty much any space that he's ever occupied. He's been a very successful entrepreneur. He's definitely a civic and a community leader, And by every stretch of the imagination, he is a wildly passionate philanthropist. He has a simple mantra that I picked up on over the past couple of years serving on the advisory board for the Institute. Think we, not just me. And you see that. You see that in his actions. You see that in pretty much everything that he's ever done. I don't think that there's a selfish bone anywhere in his body. In fact, generosity just exudes everywhere. And he's been kind of quiet, I would say, but very extensive in giving for more than 3 decades. I've never seen or heard anybody think that Ed looks for any kind of recognition or credit in the generosity that he and Sima and the family have done. He just does it because it's the right thing to do. And that's Ed. He does that which is right. If you look at his discipline of focus, because it's easy to be generous everywhere, but Ed is a man who likes to make impact. And there's really 5 areas, I would say, that you see evidence of his discipline and impact. First is on disadvantaged children, which is near and dear to my heart and that of the company that I lead. It's one of our main CSR impact areas. Young people of promise. And I would like to say that he maybe saw a little bit of that in me. I'm not too young anymore, but he definitely saw something and chose to invest, and I'll forever be grateful in that and try to pass it on as well. Community and civic initiatives, definitely whenever he sees a need and he understands the need and he sees it making the greater good, which is a successful community attracting talent. That's really when you know that a community is successful. And then research, and especially stem cell cancer research, alternative energy, and then most recently his focus on autism. And then the 5th area is really his heritage, for which I know he's very proud, and he continues to highlight it. So in addition to the corporate trust and the family foundation, in 2016, he established and endowed the Satell Institute. And that's the organization that I'm very proud to be part of, and many other CEOs in the Philadelphia region are very proud to be part of. And it's growing. It's not just in Philly anymore. We're moving into Connecticut and we're moving into central Pennsylvania because the impact and the success of both thinking and doing is real, and it's making a difference in communities. I love the academic nature of the Satell Institute and the things that many people have learned through the MOOC program done with Penn and everything that's happened there, but also the DO program, where different leaders commit for long-term, not just a splash, but a long-term impact in organizations. And that's one of the key unlocks that you can find in studying Ed's life, but also what he teaches everyone else. You don't just go in for a year. It's a multiple year impact to really get programs off the ground and making a difference in communities. So ultimately, I would just say that Mr. Satell creates and communicates really, really big visions to serve the greater good. He dedicates huge amounts of energy to implement these visions, and he donates generosity to ensure their sustainability. This gentleman has more energy than pretty much anybody I've ever met. Nobody really holds him back. And I am thankful, and I think the world is thankful for that. So I am very pleased and excited to introduce and recognize Ed Satell for the Lifetime Achievement Award.
Wow. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Nick, for all those gracious words. Nick is one of the great young entrepreneurs in the region. He is the president and CEO of a large chain of food stores. He's brought innovation way ahead of his time. His company is expanding tremendously, and he has just been a great leader. And I will acknowledge at this time, he's much younger than I am. And we love having that youth development and him being who he is. So thank you, Nick. You're a fabulous contributor to the region, to business, and to all that we stand for.
Matt? We can't hear you.
My apologies. I think we're going to go ahead and get started with Mr. David Gitlin and our Fireside Chat.
Okay. Ed?
Yes.
Hey, how are you?
Very good. Nice to see you, David.
Good to see you. How are you feeling? Congratulations.
Well, thank you very much.
You ready
David has been a great leader in his own right in Israel and the United States, and made a lot of things happen.
Well,
Thank you, David.
I'm talking to the master here, so glad to be doing that. So ready for some questions? Talk about yourself a little bit. Excellent, very good. So why don't we start from the beginning? Tell us how and why did you get involved in social activism, corporate responsibility, social impact? You spend so much time and effort and resources on that, so you must be really passionate about it. How it all started?
Well, I was born in the shadows of World War II, and I saw the end of it and the beginning of post-World War II, and the amazing effect that American democracy had on the world. And it was a beginning time for Israel too. And I thought the founding fathers of Israel and the founding fathers of the United States, who I admired greatly, were very similar. And I noticed when I was growing up that some of the older people contributed to the younger and contributed to making the community better. And I benefited from that. I thought, wow, that's a terrific thing. And so when it became my turn, I was fully prepared to embrace it.
Great. And so how did it start? What you do first?
You start a little bit at a time. Actually, my first major charity I got involved with was Save the Children, developing water in African areas or other areas that needed clean water. I got involved in the Six-Day War. I didn't have any money, but they came by and a woman whose husband was taken back and had 3 kids and answered the children, "Why are you going back?" "I'm going back so you can have a better future." And I gave generously to that. I didn't have the money, but I gave from the heart, and then I gathered the money so that I could do it. And I found that working with people, look, we're a people-oriented society. We're a society where leaders have helped make this a great place. And this is passed down from generation to generation. And when it became my turn, I was very happy to do so. I began by supporting some institutions because I was asked to do so. And I got on the board of directors and began to understand it. And then there came a time when I was doing quite a few of these things, and I said, "Josh, what am I doing? I got to have a philosophy about what I do."
Yep.
And I can't just be responding to everybody. My name is not Bill Gates, but I can do some things. And I sat down and I worked out a philosophy that I was very comfortable with. And Nick touched on that. I think every child is entitled to a happy childhood. I think kids of promise get into just as much trouble as kids without promise. They have girlfriend problems, boyfriend problems, financial problems, whatever it is, and they need mentors. They need people who have an interest in them to sort of guide them through this process so they can become all that they want to be. I fell in love with the concept of research, where these people, and I happen to know and serve on the board of the man who solved the polio problem. And gosh, I was so exciting to one man who did that. And then Salk did the drug, that you can help the community. And when I grew up, people were scared to death of polio, and much as it is today, not with polio, but with the COVID. And so that began a time of involvement that I always did quietly, liked to help, had to fit my values. The third value was community. The fourth value was basic research. And these people in basic research, their whole dream in life is to create new knowledge. Knowledge that does not exist, that can help humanity and make it a better place. And the last is my heritage. I think everybody should support their heritage. I come from a rich heritage. Most of you come from a rich heritage, whatever it may be. And heritage plays an important role in life, like history plays a role in our life. So that got me started.
It seems like you really have very close personal relationships with the people you support. What came first? Is that the relationship came first and then the involvement, or your involvement came first and then the relationship?
Well, it was relationships at the beginning when people asked me if I'd serve.
Mhm.
And so I thought they were great people, and I was glad to go ahead and have the opportunity to be of some service. But thereafter it became, I would only get involved. I never asked for grants or sought grants. Everything passed my life somehow. It touched my life somehow. And I would get involved typically when I knew the president. I wanted to know that the money that I gave would end up in the right spot. It would create impact. It would be used in a way that I would like to see it utilized. So I wanted to know the president, and as I got to know them, I was prepared to go ahead and be helpful. And one thing just led to the other. Within that, we got up to something like 36 projects with 22 institutions. It became a lot. But in any event, it has all been a good feeling to see these things work out.
Great. Have projects that haven't worked out? You've had disappointments?
Say it again. Oh, have I had projects? Well, let's talk about the short term or the long term. I think all the projects have worked out well in the short term because I knew the president and I knew what they were doing and I was very comfortable with it and I wanted to support it. What could be better than having a better place for your children, have a better place for your grandchildren, have a better place for you to live your life in safety and happiness. And so that was appealing to me.
So a lot of your projects are in Israel. So let's talk about Israel. What makes Israel an attractive place for you to spend your efforts on?
Well, Israel has always been important to me, but there was an experience that made it more important. And that was, I met Peretz Levi when he was the head of development for the world for the Technion. And I was stunned by how he could get things done. Israel is a can-do society. They know how to get things done. They're a society with great humanity, and they're a society of education, and they're a society where it's expected you get things done, and they do. I was flabbergasted to see how effective he was. And that encouraged me to go ahead and to participate more and with the Technion. And I got very involved in several world-class projects that I had the pleasure of either playing a lead role on the benefactor side. I wasn't the scientist or the administrator who ran things. And one thing led to another in that is beyond my imagination.
Yeah. Have you seen some of those projects translate into commercial successes?
Excuse me?
Have you seen some of those projects translate into commercial success?
Well, yeah. Two I can think of that are at the beginning of that stage. One is Marcel McLuth. Marcel McLuth is a storied scientist, a woman who grew up very poor in Israel, got her way through Ben Gurion and got her master's, and then went to Harvard and did a postdoc there for 5 years. And then she was recruited to come back to Israel. And I got to know her at that time. I've been a major supporter of hers. She's something called the Nano Ghost. It is really a terrific opportunity to go ahead and solve many cancers. And she is now commercializing it in the sense that they've gone into the private world, getting ready for do the kind of work that needs to get through to get the approvals from the commissions. And it's been a terrific thing to have that opportunity. Mm-hmm. She brought in one major funder, and the only other one she would allow in was me. And to be part of that has been a terrific, terrific thing. I can think of Giddy Grader. He's the founder of the energy program from the academic side in Israel. Mm-hmm. And they too have gone public with one piece of the research that they're doing, and they're world class in their fields. And it is a pleasure to have the opportunity to know them, serve them, work with them, and have an influence on them. Obviously, I don't have an influence on them in science. But I was, I sponsored a program for the best PhDs in Israel to be able to go to MIT and spend 4 years in a postdoc. And they come back as professors or leaders in the field, and I sort of thought of it as a place for the future Nobels. And I was stunned when I'd go up to visit them in Boston as a group and interact and what have you, how interested they were in me. Why were they interested in me? Who is this guy who's willing to give us an education?
Well, we're all interested in you, you know.
Excuse me?
We're all interested in you. This is what this is all about today.
Yes. So it was very interesting. They had no relationship with a businessman, no relationship with a person who gives back and supports these kinds of things. And it was quite an influence on them. Of course, they influenced me a lot. They never called me. No, none of them have ever called me and say, what do I do in this scientific process? But they do stay in touch, and we do talk about things that help them in their development, that help them with their ideas, and encourage them to be all they can be. Right now, 2 of the significant COVID researchers in Israel were part of our program. We developed them and put them through, and they're now back to Israel as professors at the school, doing things in their own right and making a contribution to the world.
Great. One of the things that I like about what you've been doing is you've been exposing a lot of people to Israel. You're bringing people to Israel for visits. You're exposing leaders and young people to Israel. I know from personal experience that anybody who has gone to Israel for the first time just comes back with a completely different perspective, and it's an impactful trip. So can you talk a little bit about that? What does going to Israel for the first time does to people?
Well, sure. Look, whenever anybody gets to Israel for the first time, it's quite a surprise and quite a moving experience. I've had the pleasure of doing that in many ways. I would send at our temple, I would send the confirmation class for 5 years in a row to Israel to spend a week as a graduation gift for confirmation. I did the Satell teen program. I was asked by Federation to get involved with that, to help that, to make that a reality. And their idea was, look, it used to be in the olden days that when Jews of talent could only work in the Jewish community. But today, Jews of talent can work anywhere. And they get into all kinds of secular kinds of activities. And they were interested in creating leaders that could continue on with the culture of Judaism. And I did that. We sent 200 kids to Israel. And we did education programs throughout the year for these kids. It took a year for them to get there. And they'd be invited to the White House every year with the head of Jewish affairs. And it was a lot of dramatic things happened. And these have all been encouraging and powerful ideas. Many of them have set up their own 501c3. Many of them went ahead and served in the Israeli defense in the army, which was a surprise because that is not what we were built for. That was not what we encouraged. But what we did encourage was for them to become all that they could be. Whatever they wanted to do, they would do it with excellence, and we encouraged them. So those are some of the programs that I've been in. But one of the most interesting ones was when I was asked by AIPAC to send a group of high-level opinion makers to Israel for a week, like the Congress goes. Part of my group was the head of communications for Obama and the head of security for Biden. I mean, he was vice president.
Sure.
And I convened them back again after their experience. And we met in Washington and to hear it all. And it was such a transformative time for them. It was thrilling to hear about the impact that they had and that they experienced and how it changed their view. One said, I'd never make a decision, 2 things. One said, I'd never make a decision want people to make a decision about Israel without having been there. And another one said, and I don't mean this to be cute, it was just what they said. He said, I'll never read the New York Times the same again. So they had these firsthand kinds of experiences to be a fly on the wall, to be able to get together with them, to be able to ask them questions about their experiences.
Yeah.
The fact that they wanted to come and be part of that was thrilling.
Yeah, I had similar experiences, and it's amazing what Israel does to people when they visit it for the first time. So now we're facing unprecedented challenges, and so let's talk about the situation today and how does the COVID pandemic has changed your views about things. What have you done? Have you shifted priorities? Have you changed your point of view about things?
Well, you can't help but be influenced by the COVID.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very pervasive kind of thing that the government has played the lead role in what we do, what we can do, what we can't do. And it's been a whole change as a society. I've been part of corporate social responsibility and organized the Satell Institute to get and convene. We're a convening group of CEOs and of businesses and nonprofits for the greater good. And we believe in nonprofits and the service that they do for the communities, which is tremendous. Without them, it wouldn't be the same. And we have convened businesses to get together, to share ideas, share experiences. It motivates each other. They want to be even more altruistic than they have been. When the COVID got going, it's a short-term experience, the COVID. It only began in January. It hasn't been around a long time. And I was sitting there in Florida and wondering, what the devil should we be thinking about? What should we be doing? And I was having trouble coming up with the idea. We're an institute, a small institute, maybe impactful institute, because all the CEOs that are part of it and enjoy it so much. But nevertheless, we're small. We're not huge. And how could we be impactful? And I decided that in thinking about it, that maybe the most impactful thing I could do was leadership by example. And so I went to our board and I said to them that I have this idea. I'd like to do $1 million match. I would put up $1 million of my own money and ask that the board go ahead and match it. Individual companies, hopefully $10,000 each, for a nonprofit, so they would get money from us, money from them, and the nonprofit would get cash liquidity for the moment. And it was a stunner as to what happened. I didn't know how many would contribute or what it would happen. Most of them have already contributed an awful lot, very substantial funds.
Mm-hmm.
When we made the announcement, altruism just rang out that they wanted to be part of it. And instantly they started to come in and say they're going to give 10,000, they're going to give 20,000, they're going to give 50,000, they're going to give 75,000. Our match was only a part. They went well beyond that. And within a week, we were halfway to our goal. And within 2 weeks, we exceeded the goal. And at the end of 3.5 weeks, we called a halt. I mean, we said we were going to do this for 4 weeks. And we were 50% over the goal. We contributed $3 million in cash, the nonprofits that have been affiliated with us, and it was a lifeline for them. And you can watch what happens, you can hear what happens, but it's so much different to be part of what happens and help things happen. And they're in desperate shape. I think it was an article in the New York Times today that talked about the plight of nonprofits and the support they need and the benefits that they give to the society.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is that you really let the members choose their own charities.
Yes, we're cause agnostic, we say, meaning you have to be a member of the Satell Institute. It's for companies and for individuals who may have been heads of companies and are now in a more retirement stage. They have to contribute a 4-year gift of a minimum $100,000, minimum of $25,000 a year for 4 years. Why that? First of all, if you give a nonprofit money for 1 year, and it's a nice chunk of money, they have to hire staff to carry out the programs. What are they going to do at the end of the year when there's no more money? Lay off the staff. It doesn't work. In order for nonprofits to go ahead and be healthy, they need multi-year gifts, and that can be sustainable for them. They're heavy with all these programs they do. They're experts in their area, and they have staff that's well trained to carry out their missions. So, to my great pleasure, companies bought into it. They'd never been used to multi-year gifts. I can tell you many companies in Philadelphia would not give a multi-year gift, but they started to do so. They had to do so to become a member, and they wanted to become a member and affiliate with the other CEOs and do that sort of thing. And so that has been a terrific thing. We've contributed several tens of millions of dollars to the nonprofits in the region. So that has been part of the Satell Institute and what it stands for. To see the altruism that comes out of these people when they've already given, to say, I want to do more. And why do they want to do more? It's their community. A better community is good for business, it's good for the people in there. And they're now working together. Philadelphia had often been a city that they didn't work together. It is known as an anti-business city with the government. And we've been able to bring them together in a way that hadn't been done before, that they enjoy. And it's kept private, quiet, to stimulate them to go ahead to learn more, do more, and others who want to become part of it are welcome to become part of it. But we can't have talkers by themselves. We need talkers and doers. And that's been the great thing about the whole United States. We've had such a history of people who've been doers and made this the greatest country in the history of the world. And I think Israel is also up there in that light, being one of the great countries in the history of the world. What they've accomplished is beyond imagination.
Have you thought about doing a Satell Institute in Israel?
Well, it's a question of manpower, a question of that we would assist in that happening. We would help in that happening, but you can get so spread that you accomplish nothing.
Right.
And we measure accomplishment. What do we want to get done? And we've had a great success here in Philadelphia. I started to say what Philadelphia is. Philadelphia has been primarily a city, look at me, not we. I said, look what we did. And it hasn't become a great philanthropic or a great business city. And we sort of united them to think we, not just me. And they're enjoying it a lot. And they share ideas, they get stimulated with each other. And we bring in great speakers for them and great meetings for them to participate in. And they're enjoying it. It's the people involved that count the most.
So your $1 million challenge money, did that follow the charity choices of the various members?
They could give.
Or did you have your own? Did you have your own choices?
You asked this before, and I don't think I gave the answer. Yes, we are cause agnostic. They can choose whatever nonprofit they want. All these nonprofits have to be approved by the government, and they have to follow the rules of them. They're all terrific. The most important nonprofit, there is one nonprofit that I think is the most important of them all, and that's the one your family needs. If you've got a kid with dyslexia, that becomes a big problem. If you have got children who are having developmental problems, that becomes a big problem. You need tutoring, or you got health problems. Your mother's got breast cancer. All of a sudden, that becomes the biggest problem.
Right.
So we support them all. We encourage them to support them. They have to give a minimum of $25,000 a year, but the average one gives $75,000 for 4 years. We welcome them all. We don't measure them by how much they give. We measure that they do participate at the levels we've talked about, and we'll support them.
Now, do you have certain preferences in terms of where to put your
Oh, sure. I have my own separate from the Institute, and I mentioned what those are. disadvantaged children, children of promise, the community, research, and my heritage. And my giving areas, I have a lot of projects in there, not just one, I have a bunch in each area. And I'm committed to that.
Right. And so I think you're clearly a very optimistic person. So when you see what's happening now with the pandemic, do you see good things coming out of that? Do you see the silver linings? Do you think
it's tough to see?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can't wake up to the problem and say, "Oh, isn't this terrific?" It'll make it somehow better. But that has traditionally been the American way. The traditional factor in America is that we get to it, we do it. We sometimes can't see the conclusion, but we work at it. We have good values, and we all want the place to be a better place. And our Constitution in the United States has been a wonder in protecting these and encouraging these values. So yes, this too shall pass. It won't last forever. While it's here, it's going to be very nasty, and we've got to do the best we can. We've got to be as cooperative as we can. We've got to be as holistic as we can. There are thousands, tens of thousands, millions of people that are out of work. Poverty is going through the sky. The economy is being hit very hard. Taxes will go up, no matter who's in there, because there's so much of a deficit. There are serious problems, and they need us. And you can't look to somebody else. You have to look to yourself and say, what can I do? All of us can do something. None of us can do everything, but we can do something. Get together with people, because the way I look at it, I inherited a great country. I did not build the roads. I did not build the schools. I did not build the hospitals. Somebody else did that. And then I came along a couple hundred years later. And now it's our turn to do something. And one of the great things in the United States usually has been that each generation makes it greater than the way it was before. Now we're in a technology kind of state, and miracles are happening in so many ways. Israel has played a major role in that. Nobody has a cell phone that does not have Israeli parts. Nobody can live their life without being exposed to Israel technology, even though you don't know it's Israel technology. But they've been great leaders in that. We're generally a positive society, and we're generally a society that will meet our responsibilities, and individually and collectively. Right now is a scary time. People are getting used to some very difficult things. Hopefully we'll have a vaccine. Hopefully the government will come together in a more cohesive kind of way. Hopefully business will play the role. Look, the dominant industry in the United States is business. If business creates the jobs, if you don't have jobs, you don't have much of anything. So they create the jobs, they create the wealth, so you can improve and develop the city, create more education and what needs to be done. So I'm from the business community, and I support very much doing things that can help the community, that are not political. We have no political, in the Institute, we have no political affiliations, and we will not accept any government money. All of the money that we do is given privately to the nonprofits with one thought in mind, and that is to make the community better. Nobody can do that individually, but collectively we can. We need the spirit of working together, not working against each other.
Yeah, so you know, every pandemic historically has led to major positive changes after it has been conquered. And if, you know, classic example, the bubonic plague led to the Renaissance. It's just look at every pandemic, something has changed to the better after that. What do you see changing to the better in the future once the pandemic is over?
Well, to make progress, you need education. The poverty areas cannot solve their poverty problems without going ahead and getting a better education. We must work to help that happen. And then the results are beyond amazing. Look back 20 years, you didn't have a computer, you didn't have a cell phone problem, you didn't have any of the things that you're dealing with today. Today you can have a piece of paper in your hand and send it to Tokyo, and it can be there in 2 seconds. I mean, that's science fiction, but it's truth today. And young people create those things. We need to have education where people build on what was done before. We all stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. Then it becomes our turn, not just to enjoy it, not just to be safe, not just that, but to go ahead and make the world a better place. And it starts with community. Make the community a better place. It can start in your own niche. Every contribution matters when it's done in a positive way and when it's done in a way that people can benefit. Collectively, it's been the greatest country in the history of the world. We went from an insignificant country to a dominant one in so many ways. Is it perfect? Of course not. How many homes are perfect? How many where everybody gets along with their brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, or whatever the case may be? But we need to work in positive ways to go ahead. It's our world, it's our children, it's our grandchildren.
Great. Wonderful. Well, that's a good, hopeful note and call for action. Anything else you would like to share with us to motivate people to do better and follow your lead?
Well, I want to share my appreciation for the Philadelphia Israel Chamber of Commerce. You were there for one sole reason, and as a stimulate activity between it. Everybody needs to be involved in foreign trade and foreign extension and educational exchange and making things happen. You've become a leader in that. You open doors for people. You bring people together. And I've been amazed just in the short time I've been exposed to you guys and working how terrific I think you are and the kind of conscientious work that I think that you do.
Well, that's very kind of you. And like what you do, we couldn't be doing that without the support of the community that surrounds us. So everybody here on the call and everybody who couldn't make it are contributors to that effort.
I would just like to add, I think I said it before, but I'd just like to add this. Israel is such a can-do environment. If you're around people that can't do, it's not going to happen. If they think negatively, it's not going to happen. But it has to be dreamers. It has to be people that want to help, that think beyond themselves. And today we have a very, very divided society. Politically, it's more divided than ever. We have to go back to the Civil War to find so much disagreement. We need to get agreement with each other. It doesn't start with the government, it starts with us.
Mm-hmm.
And starts with the things that we support and we want to do. And in America, we've had a lot of great people in our history that have helped make it what it is.
Yeah, Israel, it's just a place, every time I go, I'm surrounded by this flow of ideas that people can't stand still. It's just this constant desire to do something and innovate. It's a marvelous, marvelous environment.
Could I make one other comment in that regard?
Sure.
I've chosen to do it in a quiet way. I stay out of the newspapers. I don't look for publicity. I try not to have it in most cases, unless there's a special situation. I will, of course, support a nonprofit that wants to go ahead and feather their nest. But I found the best way to go about things is quietly, and you can get much more done. Whatever anybody does to help can be very, very important.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's amazing the impact you've had quietly. And so it's been very, very effective, and we all thank you for it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Vera, do you want to open this to questions from the participants, or move on to the, yeah.
Yes, thank you so much, Debbie, and of course, Ed, for your very inspiring words. I wrote myself so many notes that I will definitely use in the future. And because at rough times, you do need inspiring people like you to carry us on with a positive attitude. So thank you so much. And thank you for all that you've done for our community. I'd like to open, first of all, before we continue, I'd like you to show your award. And I think we should, everybody, please unmute yourself. I'll figure out how I am unmuting everybody.
This is a very, I don't know if you can see it.
And I want everybody to see it. You can unmute yourself. And I have to say a major thank you for one amazing woman, Regina, who is incredible. Regina, can you show yourself? I don't know if it's possible. We have to thank Regina Lennox. Who made this all happen. So Regina will take your picture with the award. I'd like everybody to unmute. And first of all, we have to cheer for Ed. Accomplishments.
Bravo.
Oh boy, Ed.
Thank you. Everything. And I'd like to open the floor for questions. If anybody has a question, if you look on the bottom, there is a button that is called reactions. It's the one on the second on the right. If you raise your hand, there's we can allow for questions one by one, if that is okay. David Alon, I see your question. You are unmuted, you can ask your question.
Terrific. Ed Satell, congratulations. It's a well-deserved award. I wanted to refer to your comment about the New York Times. New York Times had a very good study about nonprofits. Specifically, they said that around 1.4 million people in nonprofits have lost their positions, have been furloughed. What can the Greater Philadelphia community do to support their chosen nonprofits? And, you know, as an example, what you do with the Satell Institute, because it's heartbreaking. I mean, there's thousands of good nonprofits and they're struggling.
And anyone who's not speaking, please unmute your speaker, okay? And then when you want to ask the question, unmute it again. So mute right now so we could hear Ed better. Thank you.
Yes, there is a tension there. Look, sometimes one's first exposure to being involved is their kid's school. Most people care about their kids and they care about the school, and that's a start. And things touch your life, and if you can help with that, that's terrific. I think the New York Times article said, correct me if I'm wrong, that nonprofits are the third biggest employer. So they employ an awful lot of people. They do not get the highest wages at all. They're dedicated people who care about a particular mission. That has played an incredible role in the United States. They do it rather than government in many places. They are sort of innovative entrepreneurial organizations that don't get much salaries and what have you, but are committed to some area of the society in making it better. And I encourage everybody to try to help somewhere. It's easy to sit on the sidelines. You don't have to be you can choose your own role and your own organization. But it does make the society better. And the New York Times article, I think, pointed out to how big an employer they are in the country. But they've had to lay off a lot of people to carry out their functions. They're getting by with very thin, threaded kinds of activity. And I think of nonprofits as the workhorse within the community. You got a problem, you find a nonprofit that will help, whether it be a health problem, a developmental problem, a physical problem, a handicap, or what have you. There's a nonprofit in almost every one of these areas to help.
Thank you so much. Now, our Neil Cooper would like to ask a question.
Thanks, Ed, and great job to everybody today. Ed, great to see you. Congratulations. It's a wonderful honor. And I do have to say you're tremendously inspirational with the way that you bring the community together, both in Philadelphia and elsewhere. the way that you emphasize doing rather than just thinking about things, but doing both. And the breadth of issues you're involved with is truly impressive, both here and in Israel. And so the question I have for you is, if you look toward Israel and the impact it can make on the world that you so impressively described, what do you see as a sort of the next area that people should look to get involved with, and particularly when you look at the connection that can be made between our region and Israel? What should people be looking toward?
Well, first I might mention that when I met you recently, within the past year, and I introduced you to the new president of the Technion, the next thing I know, you're going to Israel with the governor of Pennsylvania, making a connection between Pennsylvania and Israel. I thought it was a terrific thing that you did, and I heard some very nice things about it. Refresh me, wait a minute, redirect me on your question.
Thank you. Yeah, well,
What else can be done in Israel? Israel's interested in two things. Israel's interested in self-preservation. They do not want to be destroyed. They do not want to be in that position. They live in a very tough neighborhood. So staying alive and staying functional is very important. And I don't know any country that has done a better job on that than they have. Second, they're very serious about education. And within Israel, they deal with what we call multi-dimensional issues. In other words, it's not just somebody from chemical engineering doing something and somebody doing something in physics. They put together teams of people, so they cross-pollinize. And I don't think any country in the world does it better than they do. That is, to take interdisciplinary kinds of people, put them together, and they solve problems. So what does Israel stand for the most, besides the defense, besides their survival? I think I would say, and this is just one person's opinion, it's education. It starts with the Army. When they're 18 years old, they go into the Army. And they're in many ways typical, like American 18-year-olds or 17-year-olds. But they get into the Army and they learn things and they're given responsibility. And they come out of the Army as a much more developed human being with a destiny, with thoughts, with ambition, and tapping into that market, tapping into the educational market, tapping into the entrepreneurial market, tapping into the innovation market, whether it be public companies, private companies, or whatever, is an honor and a privilege to be part of them, to see how they have a talent for getting things done. So I would encourage any kind of association. You can't just call on the phone, but you've got to get involved somehow. It starts a little smaller. You get to know people, you get involved, you can take these small steps, and then they become larger steps as you know more people, as you know more about it, as you learn from their education. I think I got back a heck of a lot more than I gave. I think dealing with Israel and learning from them and seeing how they operate and giving me a chance to make contributions has been a wonderful, wonderful experience for me and for my family.
I have more quotes to quote you than anybody I've ever met. You have so many pearls. I have Matt Fingerman. Pardon me?
Gary has a question. Can he go?
Yes, Gary has a question and Matt Fingerman has a question. Go ahead, Gary.
All right, I just unmuted. First of all, Ed, congratulations. This is very well deserved. A comment that you made earlier, all of us can do something, none of us can do everything. There's one exception to that, and that's you. I don't think there's anything I've seen you put your mind to that you have not been able to do. I'm a person who grew up in the computer industry, surrounded with a lot of very competent, innovative, creative people. But I've never, but I've never in my life met anybody who is as innovative and creative as you are. And we are very proud to be a part of your family and to consider you a friend. You made one other comment, and that is, and I guess it's true, Ed makes the world a better place for all of us. And it's probably just an amazing thing that you do. I don't know how you do it. I am in awe of how you come up with some of these things. Now, having made that statement, I have a question. It has been clear to me for a long period of time the concept of social responsibility in business is a very strong thing, all right? You've managed to succeed in making that something in the Philadelphia area that has been adapted by most of the leadership of companies throughout the Philadelphia area. But it's not a concept that just belongs in Philadelphia. And I know that it takes an awful lot of effort. It may detract, but how do we get that concept to be a part of what business people know and understand as part of their life? That it isn't always focused just on the profits you can make for the people who own the business, but all of us have a social responsibility. How do we broaden that and make it more of a universal thing?
I hate to quote Chairman Mao, but 1,000-mile journey begins with a single step. And we try to do something. You can't take on everything at the beginning. You have to do something. And as you do that something, plan for not all to be successful. Everything you do doesn't come out to be successful, and people are not out there showing as much appreciation as you would like them to do. But if you have a heart that wants to give and contribute, you find a way, you get involved a little bit at a time, and that grows. I had no idea all these things I'd be doing. I can't tell you it was a great plan. It was not. But it emerged over time. One thing leads to the other, just as it has in your life. You've gone from stage to stage, situation to situation, and gotten new friends or new relationships or what have you. What we have to do, I think, is have a spirit like our founding fathers had. They were willing to give up their honor, their money, and their lives for this concept of America. That has always been the case in America. And people will come, it's going to be the 10% of the people, won't be them all. We'd love to have them all. But I encourage everybody to do something, but you cannot start with a big dream. You got to start with a small one and learn from that and contribute with that. And you will benefit. For me, I've been so enriched by this. For me to be around, I was not a top student, but for me to be around some of these top professors who are so terrific and who somehow admire something I've done. It's not in the science, it's in another area, and we can collaborate on these things is a wonderful thing. You earn your way a little bit at a time. Do something, take these small steps.
Thank you so much.
My boss wants to get in.
But the woman that makes it happen, please, here, unmute.
Unmute.
Now I
Thank you
think
so
you can.
much. I'll be very brief. Ed, is always, you've done a yeoman's job, and that I believe is because it all comes from your heart. And I am so proud to be by your side and be your wife. And it's so important because today, all of our children and grandchildren, God bless them, are on listening to you and hearing all of your words and everything that you've done. And all I can do is pray that Hashem will grant them to carry on what you have done, because it is amazing. May I say one more thing? I just want to say to Nick Bertram, thank you for the wonderful and beautiful words that you said about Ed. And I wanted to tell him I now have a giant card.
He apologized that he had to go to a board meeting, so he's not with
Okay.
us, but I will definitely pass it along. This is a recording, so.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
We have a question from Matt Fingerman, and I think we may have some more. And if anybody wants to stay longer to congratulate Ed, please do so. We don't have, we could stay as long as you wish. Thank you, Sima, so much for everything that you've done to make this happen. Matt?
Thanks. And Ed, again, congratulations. And thank you for all you do, not only for our great country here, but also Israel. I'm curious on your perspectives. We've seen certain industries from a business standpoint hit so hard by the pandemic. Things like hospitality, entertainment, retail. Is there a role for a charitable cause to support these industries, or is it better to let kind of business take it's course or allow kind of the government to handle that?
No, look, when somebody's sick, help them.
We can hear you well.
If somebody's sick, help them. You know, the easiest thing to do is let other people do it. But that's not the way it's going to happen. If you have the passion and you feel lucky to be here, I've always felt lucky to be an American. I mean, when I grew up, kids were going to the ovens. It was a frightening thing to see and hear and whatever. And whatever problems we've had here have been minor compared to the problems that others have had to go through. So I'm appreciative of my grandparents, my great-grandparents, and those who came before us. And finding a way to help is a terrific thing. But it's not just terrific because you're helping them. You're helping and building yourself. It's not all peaches and cream. You know, there'll be days when you'll disagree with people. You'll have another. But we need to think cooperatively. We need to find how can we help? How can we get along and make something together? Those people that you're talking about Matthew, are under tremendous pressure. And a lot of them are going out of business. And a lot of them are not giving the services that they can anymore because they're whipped. They don't have the resources to do it. And it'll exacerbate everything. So somehow we need to come together. The more people that can get involved, the more people that can find a way. Don't look for the newspapers. Look for something you can do with anything that you're involved with. They're all great ones. You just choose the ones that you feel you want to help, but do something. You can't say, oh, I got to think about it. Somehow you get a start, and that's how you learn.
Great, thank you so much.
We need each other.
Indeed.
More than ever.
Well, thank you so much. Does anyone want to ask additional questions or congratulate Ed? This is the opportunity. Don't be shy.
Well, go ahead. Somebody speaking.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Rosenbaum. I wanted, first of all, to congratulate you, Ed. You've been an inspiration, not only to me, but to so many others. And in that context, you mentioned the Satell Fellows. When I had the privilege of being president of Gratz College, we sent so many of those kids, not only to Washington, but to Israel, and built a connection. And as you pointed out, many of them established their own 501c3s, began to build for the future. And that leads me to the question, and I wonder, you have planted seeds. Many of those people whom I see from time to time are now in their 20s, and they are changing the world for the better. And I wonder how there might be other avenues to look to the future through the present day youth. What would you suggest people who care about supporting nonprofits should do in making sure that the young people, particularly people both of gift and commitment, can make their own contributions in the future?
Well, first, being involved in what I am gave me the pleasure to get to know Jonathan Rosenbaum, who is a great scholar, who I had the pleasure of meeting, and he can talk with such authority about what happened 2,900 years ago, 3,000 years ago, 3,200 years ago. He's an enormous scholar and been president of an institution in this regard, that it is always a joy for me to be around him and hear him talk, and he'll answer any question that I might have, which has been a thrill. Look, there's no magic way. You've got to just start one foot at a time and do it. We've got to encourage young people today have come into the greatest world in the history of mankind with more opportunities than there's ever been. You need an education to capitalize on some of that. You need to have a will to capitalize on that. You need but this is just considered an entrepreneurial activity. You start someplace and you help some. group that you feel good about. And you've got a connection somehow with one of them. Somebody's in your family's got problems, somebody in your family you've been around, or you have your own passions. Whatever it is, get a start and get that experience. And I know I try to do that with my own children. And we want to encourage that. We're not always successful at it, but we got to keep trying. We got to keep working at it so they can have the same opportunities that we have. Self-experience is a great thing. Going through an experience. I never had a job that I didn't learn something from that didn't help me in doing something else. So I encourage that to do that. It's not all about big deals. It's about little deals that eventually become bigger deals.
Wonderful.
Bert, can I say something? This is Michael Waxman on behalf of the Technion. So first of all, Ed, I think you are a big deal. And so we want to thank you really on behalf of the entire Technion family. You've mentioned a number of the very special relationships like Marcel or Giddy Grader that also really deeply admire what you've done. And I want to give one highlight, how they're in a way following you now when you hear the new president, Uri Sivan, talk about the education of the engineer in the 21st century, and there will be a new leadership center. It has many of the themes that your institute about social responsibility, what you've already, I almost said preached for years, what you have helped to broaden the awareness, which, Uri Sivan says, that is the awareness, that is the knowledge that future leaders in technology need to have, because they bear such an amazing responsibility for our society. And so I love seeing, how you bring this here, and I hope, that the Technion can benefit of what you built here in this direction, because I can tell you, they're following you. They're really seeing that this is such an important theme for future technology leaders that are obviously being educated at the Technion. So thank you so much for all you've done. And I can only replicate what everybody said. We love your energy and your optimism, especially in these times. Thank you.
Well, Michael is the president of the American Technion Society. He's doing a fabulous job in very difficult times. And I just want to say, Michael, that I want to thank the Technion for giving me the opportunities they have, where I could be helpful, I could be useful. And it's been a thrill for me to do it, and it's enlarged my life in many, many ways. So thank you.
And I have to say the governor was very impressed and I thank you for your involvement, Ed, and Technion for hosting Governor Wolf in January. He was very, very impressed during our visit. We have Linda Richmond would like to congratulate you, and later Beth Raisin would like to congratulate you. Go ahead, Linda, you're on mute.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Ed, it's so good seeing you again. And mazel tov, mazel tov, mazel tov. Your energy drives projects that are incredible. And your vision is not to be compared to anyone at all. Your vision is what separates you from everyone else. And you put it into motion and you do it with excellence. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Linda. Linda has been a very important role. I never, she called me to go ahead and meet Perez Flavi, and I said no. Please. And she kept pushing me to go ahead and to meet him, and I said, I just don't need another outlet like that at this time. And she kept pushing and told me he's a sleep expert of the world and one other things. And I met him, and he came over and we'd spent some time, and I fell in love with what they were talking about. It was an amazing transition. So Linda, thank you very much for being the initiator of all this. And it's been a pleasure working with you and with the whole Technion family.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you. Beth Resin, are you there?
Yes, hi, I'm here. Ed, it's so wonderful to see you on screen, Sima, some of the children who I've met. I had the pleasure of working on the Satell Teen Fellowship on behalf of Jewish Federation of Greater Philly, and I have to say, not only did I appreciate the work that, we got to do, but I appreciated you and Regina when you would push us to think about how to do these programs differently. And even when we took the students to Israel on those trips, you really encouraged us to broaden the things we did with the students. But getting to visit some of the Technion labs was some of the highlights, especially for some of the students who are now doctors and engineers and went into science research themselves. So it was very inspiring. And I just want to say Mazel Tov. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the role that you played. You were always great at Federation and enabling some of these things to happen.
My pleasure.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for participating. Thank you, everybody, for congratulating. Thank you for all the sponsors, and very, very big thanks to you, Ed, and to your team and to your family in making this happen. I look forward, on behalf of the Philadelphia Israel Chamber and PICC Foundation, to continue working with you and growing the social impact innovation in the region. You are a great inspiration. I'd like everybody to unmute. And thank you so much. And Yashar Koach.
Thank you.
Grass Ed.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Judy.
Bye-bye.
Deb.
Hey, well.
Great chatting to you.
Bye, David. Bye,
Great chatting with
Brandon.
you,
Bye,
Ed.
Michael. Bye, Stephen.
Thank you, David.
Bye, Rona.
Bye,
Bye,
Mary.
Casey, Matt.
You.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.